Hello, everyone, and welcome to JobBoardGeek. It's the podcast about the business of connecting employers and candidates. I'm Jeff Dickey-Chasins. I am the job board doctor, your host for today. And with me is the erudite, Mr. Steven Rothberg of College Recruiter. He's the co-host. Hey, Steven, how are you?
I am great. Trying to adjust to 2022. Good to be with you again, Jeff.
Yeah. You didn't say anything about me calling you erudite. Do you know what that means?
I've been trying to figure out what the word is and using a dictionary, but I don't remember how to use a dictionary, so I'm struggling.
Yeah, well, I've got to get some mileage out of my English major somehow. So, anyway, today we've got a great guest, someone that I've worked with and known for quite a while, Mac Pritchard of Maxlist, coming out of Portland, Oregon. But first, I just wanted to chat a little bit about the kind of interesting news. And some people thought it was big news. Some of them thought it was just sort of a nothing burger. The fact that Facebook is closing down Facebook jobs all around the world except for the US and Asia. Now, it's kind of interesting because I had mentioned this in my blog and I got some reactions online. Bill Borman was basically saying, hey, this is the beginning of the second phase. They're going to pull back and they're going to do this stuff, and it's going to be, the next big thing, which I kind of feel like Facebook has been doing the next big thing for like the last 5 or 6 years. So I tend to fall into the second camp, which is they fell on their face. It was not particularly successful. They're pulling back, and I imagine there's some heavy assessment about whether they're going to stay in the U.S. market or not, because they've got bigger fish to fry, as in their beloved metaverse. So I don't know. What do you think, Stephen?
Well, I think it's the U.S. and Canada. I think, isn't it, that they're continuing to allow job postings?
I think it's the U.S. and Asia. I think it's at Asia too. I may be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not usually wrong, but I might be.
Yeah, I think I read that as of like February 22nd or something like that, that they're just going to be taking postings from for jobs that are located in the U.S. and Canada. But in any case, boy, I had some contact with one of the founders of Facebook way back when they were just still serving individual college and university markets before they rolled out to the general public, and had a partnership discussion with them back then. And they didn't really know what to do with jobs back then. They ended up doing a deal with Career Builder, which was a quote unquote integration. And what that really was just banner ads from Career Builder.
Yep.
I definitely think it's content that they know that there's a huge benefit if they can get it right. But as those of us in the job board world know, it's a lot harder than it looks.
Yep. I mean, that's a conversation I've had with almost every startup client that I've ever dealt with, which is it's a lot more complex than you think it is. I'm always happy when I work with a startup client that's actually worked with a job board before, because then we don't have to have that conversation. But I think, I remember eHarmony came into the market the same way that Facebook did and sort of said, hey, we've got the magic tool. We understand matching through our dating app. And 3 years later, they slunk out of the market. And I think that Facebook just doesn't quite have a handle and or the will to do it. And they've also got a lot of external factors driving them away from the market, including, EU regulations and privacy concerns. And like I said, the metaverse. So, I guess we'll see what happens. But anyway, today on the show, we've got a fellow that I've known for a while, Mac Pritchard. He has been in the area of job boards for quite a while. And he started out in Portland with his very focused PR agency focusing on nonprofits, and expanded his work into what was called Maxlist. And I think I'm going to let him take over from there. So Mac, welcome to JobBoardGeek.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here. It's great to be on the show. And
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how Maxlist got started and just sort of what your thinking was when you were getting things off the ground?
well, I started Maxlist as a way of being of service to my professional network. I had gone through 2 long periods of unemployment early in my career. I knew what it was like to cash the last unemployment check once, and I came within one check of doing it a second time. So my way of being of service was to share job postings, and I did that uh, regularly starting 20 years ago this last summer. And I did it without any
Wow.
expectation of turning it into a business. And along the way, I had a career in communications. I worked for elected officials, nonprofits, and state agencies. Eventually, I started my own public relations company 14 years ago now, and I continue to operate it. But I found that I was paying one of my employees basically a part time wage to send out these postings, and I stopped doing it for a few weeks. And people started calling me that I didn't know, and they said, "Are you okay?" and, and that uh, drove home for me that I was providing a service, I was meeting a need. And so I got serious about it, turned it uh, from just occasional emails into a weekly newsletter and then a website, and started charging employers for listings. And I did that 11 years ago now. Though I really do date the start of the company back to the summer of 2001 when I would send out these job postings week after week.
Wow. And just to clarify for people who are listening, if I remember correctly, your site is focused geographically around the Portland, Oregon area, more or less,
It
although I know
is.
you have listings elsewhere.
Yeah, we're a
Hmm.
regional job board. We're based in Portland, Oregon. We serve employers and job seekers in Oregon and Washington. And our mission is to make hiring more human. And we do that not only by providing job postings, but we provide a lot of free content for job seekers about how to get good at job search as a skill. We do that through articles, online courses. We have a couple of books and a weekly career advice podcast. But many of our customers, the employers who pay for the postings, are small operations and they don't have an HR department. And the person who's put in charge of hiring is not formally trained in how to write a posting, the importance of including salary range. Nuts and bolts basics that we take for granted are new to them. And so we provide a lot of content about how to hire smarter. And I think that's what distinguishes us from a lot of the good other job boards out there. We not only provide the positions and the audience, but we help both of our customers, job seekers and employers, get good at the skills they're going to need to find either a great job or a great candidate.
Yeah, that's it, and it's not to plug my other content gig, but I actually posted a blog post today that was all about, what does your content say about your job board? And I think, I've always thought of Maxlist as a perfect example of a site where if you go in and you start poking around and looking at, listening to the podcast, reading the different columns, the different blog posts. You get this sense of what Maxlist is all about. I mean, there's sort of an editorial personality, I think, to what you put out on there. Is that something that you've consciously cultivated?
It is, and I think a number of things make us unique in our space. And we talked about the amount of content. The regional focus is a second way that we stand out. And I think the commitment to service, both to employers and job seekers, is something else that makes us distinctive. And candidly, it's driven by my own personal experience. Was I had in all modesty, I thought I'd had some cool jobs in my 20s and 30s, and thought job what the way you look for work was just respond to ads. And my periods of unemployment taught me that you got to get good at job search skills, particularly setting goals. And then my work at Max List is in getting involved in hiring has taught me that if you're going to find great candidates, you just can't rely on postings alone. So I'm very proud of the value that our job board offers, both to job seekers and employers. But I will be the first to tell you, if you are a candidate and you're relying only on job boards to find your leads and all you're doing is applying, you're making your search so much harder and longer than it has to be. And if you're an employer and you're relying on your posting alone to bring you great candidates, you're making your search for that next great employee, much harder and longer than it has to be. That's why we invest in content and to serve both audiences. Because once you understand how hiring works, whether you're an employer or a candidate, then you can make the system work for you. And that is central to our mission at Maxlist, making hiring more human. Finally, another way that we stand out is we're a certified benefit corporation, what's called a B Corp. We're part of a global movement of business as a force for social good. And we think we're the first B Corp job board out there. I know there are some others now, but we're very proud of that. And in my career, trying to make a difference in the community where I live and work, whether it was working for nonprofits, government agencies, or elected officials, or now through the job board and the PR firm, it's been central. And it's a value that's important to our 5-person team at Maxlist as well.
Interesting. Steven, I'm sorry. I thought you had something to say too, didn't you?
Yeah. So just wanted to pick up on a couple of things that you said, Mac. So one was when people were asking you if you were okay, when people ask me that question, it's more of an accusation than it is out of a concern. So glad to see that you don't share the same sort of relationships that I share. I wanted to pick up on the B Corporation.
I have to say though, Steven, that like you, I share Midwestern roots. I grew up in Iowa, so I know fundamentally you are okay, and you're a good Midwestern nice guy too.
Hey, you know what? It's 2 Iowans to 1 Minnesotan on this particular episode of JobBoardGeek. Yes. I like the odds. So
yeah, I'm just waiting for the Iowa jokes to follow from Steven. But to your point, Steven.
Yeah, the podcast is usually only 20, 25 minutes long, and to just start with the Iowa jokes would take hours. But the B Corporation, I had heard of that. I wasn't familiar with it until recently, and when I first heard about that, I thought it was literally a different kind of corporation. In the U.S., there are S corporations, which are sort of like partnerships. You get corporate protection, profits flow through to the owners, so it makes it easier for tax filings. There's C corporations, which are kind of the standard. And then there are a whole bunch of different, nonprofits, et cetera. But maybe you can talk with our listeners about, what a B corporation is, whether that's just an American thing, whether that's international, how you use that for marketing to the job seekers, to the employers, or is that really more of internal only, just sort of the way you operate, or do you use that to promote your site also?
Certified benefit corporations manage for the triple bottom line. So profit matters, and it is important. But we also look at community benefits and environmental benefits of our operations. And the way it works, Steven, is there's a internationally recognized organization. It's called B Lab. It's headquartered in the United States, but it works with companies all around the world. And you go through a initial certification process, and then you recertify every 2 years. And when you do that process, you go through a set of checklists that look at your practices and the environmental and community benefits and consequences of that, as well as your profitability. And it's like any process improvement, going through it in a steady, methodical way will help you improve your business processes and make you a stronger and better company. And when your goal is to promote community and environmental benefits, this is a system for doing that. To your point about the marketing, benefits of being a B Corp, it does make a difference. It's a way to stand out. There's a logo you can display on your website and your advertising materials. And it does matter to many of our employers that we are a benefit corporation, and it helps with recruitment and retention as well. I find that the people who work with us, but I think this is true for many, many people, they want their work to matter. And you don't have to work for a B Corp to do that. I think there's a dignity and a meaning in work that you can find anywhere with the right employer. But with a benefit corporation, it is a way of doing business that just becomes part of how you operate. And that is very appealing to both our customers and to our team.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great, and it is true. I mean, after I'd worked with you, I sort of went casting around to see, what other job boards, if any, were B corporations, and I believe I found maybe one or two, and that was it. It was not a common thing, but I've I agree with you that there are a lot of benefits. One of the benefits that you didn't mention, which I think would be really critical, particularly for a job board that's growing rapidly, is I think it's a good sales point when you're talking to potential candidates. It's both a plus when you talk about the way the companies run, but it also is a qualifier where certain types of candidates are going to be more likely to want to work with you. And you talk about being able to build a company culture that's sort of focused around some good values. B Corp is a good way to go about it. So I would think that would be useful to
Jeff,
you.
and it does help attract candidates who care about those values, and that's terrific.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so I'm kind of curious. I mean, we're talking about all the nice stuff, but there have been some sort of challenging things that have happened in the industry over the past 3 years, and I was just curious, how has the pandemic affected Maxlist initially and sort of as an ongoing issue for you, or has it?
It has. 2020 was a tough year, and we started out strong, but when the pandemic hit in March, we saw our revenue drop 80% just in 1 week, and it didn't bottom out until June. And our money comes from the sale of job postings, either in the form of single postings, subscriptions, or custom packs. And so when that happened, we made a number of big changes fast, and we closed our downtown Portland office. We became 100% virtual. We renegotiated the lease with our landlord. We renegotiated or changed important supplier and vendor contracts. We're looking for ways to reduce costs and overhead. We did have to furlough the staff, a 5-person team, 2 days a week for 6 months, starting in June of 2020. The goal was to avoid layoffs. And in Oregon, where we're based, there's a state program that allows you, if you maintain healthcare and other benefits, if you're furloughed, to collect unemployment insurance. It doesn't make up the lost wages, but it helped. And by the end of the year, we'd reduced our overhead considerably. So while revenue for the year went down about 39%, we actually had a very small operating loss that we were able to cover through the PPP loan. And when we started in 2021, we were in a much stronger place as a company because we'd made some fundamental changes that, candidly, Jeff, I'm not sure we would have made so quickly and rapidly if we hadn't had that dramatic drop in revenue. So we're haven't officially closed the books for 2021, but starting in February, the revenue started going up, and we had a number of record months. And so we came within a few percentage points by the end of 2021 of setting a new record for revenue. But most importantly, it was our best year ever for profits in 11 years of operations. And I think a big part of that was the good work of the team, but also these fundamental changes that we made to our business model and operations that we might not have done without the pandemic.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard this story several times from clients, and then also we've heard it a few times on the podcast where people talk about, well, the bad thing about the pandemic was, getting slapped upside the head and seeing all your revenue go out the door for X amount of time. But the good part of it was that it forced you to sort of rethink your assumptions about how you run your business.
Yeah.
And for some, for many, actually, they've gone your direction of being fully remote. For many, they've gone and looked again hard at where their audience is, their candidate audience and their employer audience. But I think those kinds of shocks to the system, if you survive them, are
Yeah.
very good. I've been around long enough that I've gone through several of those shocks. I remember the first tech bubble back in 2000, and that was very painful. And of course, we all remember the recession. But out of each one of those, I personally experienced a lot of growth, and I've seen the companies that I've worked for and with do well as well. So I think it's not fun, I guess, why it's happening. And I think Brad from Local Eyesight was saying it's still not quite fun, but it's getting more fun than it was. So I guess you have to have a sense of humor and sort of a philosophical outlook to things, and I know you certainly do. So
Yeah,
That which doesn't kill you just makes you stronger.
it
yeah, yeah,
agreed, and it was not especially not fun to furlough the team. But again, we try to do. The goal was to avoid layoffs, and I'm grateful that they stuck with me because that's hard. The uncertainty that followed those 6 months, you're not quite sure when it's going to end, if ever. Um, so
yeah. Well, so we're almost out of time here, but I wanted to ask you one last question, Mac, and this is just sort of uh, curiosity because we've talked to a lot of different job boards and even a supplier, JobSync, thus far, and we're sort of looking at all these different aspects of what's going on in the industry, and so something that's been sort of omnipresent since at least 2014 has been programmatic. Um, Another one that I thought was going to be beaten to the ground until I would not be able to sleep was AI. And of course, it's still not dead. It's still out there pumping away. But these are things that, a lot of the thought leaders in the industry are saying, well, if you're not doing programmatic, if you're not doing AI driven recruiting, if you're not doing this, if you're not doing that, you won't survive. Um, I guess my question to you is, what do you think about that? I mean, do you think those technologies are a threat to your survival, or do you think that maybe they don't matter to your employer audience?
well, I think you can build a business without using those technologies, and it can thrive and grow. That's been my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Candidly, I am an inadvertent job board operator. Again, my career was in political communications, but I became a job board operator because I was an inveterate networker. What I have had to do since starting the business is learn how job boards work, and I had to take the same approach with when I started my public relations company. I had not come up through the agency world. I'd come up through nonprofits and politics and government. So I would go to these agency conferences, and I found going to job board conferences can be just as helpful. And there's a learning curve. And it may be, Jeff, that if we talk again in 5 years, I will have embraced those technologies. But I feel like on my job board journey, I've got to master the fundamentals first. And my experience has shown me that you can build a thriving, prosperous business focusing just on the old fashioned nuts and bolts job board and make a positive difference in the lives of the people that you serve, both employers and job seekers. Um, I'm intrigued by these other technologies and hope to get to them one day. But right now, I'm focusing on the basics, and it's going well.
Yeah. Well, I think, for me, the acid test on what you're doing is do the customers come back? And if they come back, then you're doing something worthwhile for them. And obviously, that's happening for you this year. So, well, listen, Mac, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. And if our listeners want to get in touch with you and chat, and which they should, since you, as you said, you're an inveterate networker. How do they get in touch with you?
Please connect with me on LinkedIn and include a note and say that you heard me on your show. And I also can be reached by email. It's my first name, Mac, M-A-C, at maxlist.org. And visit our website, maxlist.org. And I host a weekly podcast now in its sixth year of production. Every week I talk to a different career expert about the nuts and bolts of job search. It's called Find Your Dream Job, and you can find it wherever you download your podcasts. I hope you'll check that out as well.
Great. Well, thanks, Mac, and good luck on your podcast. We're still infants in the cradle compared to you as far as this goes. But Steven, I was just wondering how people would get in touch with you if they want to probe your brain.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me via email, Steven, Steven, at collegerecruiter.com. And Mac, it's been awesome learning from you how you can find ways of creating winning situations, not just for you as an owner, but for your employees and most importantly, your community, and how it just circles back. We all do better when we all do better.
That's yeah. I'll second that. So, okay, folks, that's it for today's episode of Job Board Geek. Please be sure to subscribe to us via RSS, Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, or any of the many other ways that you can subscribe. My name's Jeff Dickey-Chasins, the Job Board Doctor, and you've been listening to the only podcast that focuses on the business of connecting candidates and employers. That's all for now. We'll see you next time.